journey, and he was doing his best to fulfill that order. "Mine ahead!" a lookout screamed, bringing Douglas's attention back to their present danger. Douglas had been getting too far ahead of himself. First, they had to get through the minefield. Suddenly, the PT boat lurched to starboard, throwing Douglas off balance as the commander took immediate evasive action. The other boats followed his lead as they all continued to work their way through the deadly waters. "We're all clear of the minefield, General," Douglas finally heard the boat commander announce after 2 harrowing hours. He gave a nod of gratitude as the big Packard engine opened up to full throttle, shaking the darkness. As the PT boat smashed its way forward into the 15-foot waves of the open sea, Douglas thought how vast and different was the Pacific Ocean in which the Philippines lay from the West Texas desert that was home to his earliest memories. He recalled the Army post outside El Paso where, as a 5-year-old, he had gathered his first memories of reveille, parades, and practice maneuvers. Who could ever have imagined that from that dry, desolate place he would end up commanding forces spread across such a huge reach of ocean? As he had so many times before, Douglas wished his father were alive to see how far his youngest son had come. Chapter 2. The Life of a Captain's Son. Douglas blinked and looked again. It was still there, a shaggy shape emerging from the sandy dunes around Fort Selden near El Paso, Texas. Douglas pulled his spotted Navajo pony to a halt and shouted to his older brother, "Look, Arthur, over there! Do you think it's a camel?" Douglas watched as his brother laughed and then turned in the direction he was pointing. Arthur glanced back at Douglas, his eyes wide. "It looks like it is a camel. But how could it be?" he mused. "Let's go and ask Father. He'll know what it is." The 2 boys turned their horses and galloped back through the gates of the fort. They did not dismount until they were right in front of Captain Arthur MacArthur's office. Then they raced inside. "Father, Father, you'll never guess what we saw," Douglas panted. "It was a camel. I'm sure it was a camel, about a mile outside the gate." "Father, do you think we really saw one?" Arthur asked. Captain MacArthur chuckled. "I think you did," he said, "and I bet I know where it came from. Back in the war, Jefferson Davis chartered a ship from Egypt to bring over herds of camels. He wanted them to be used as pack animals on the supply trains, used to link the isolated forts in Indian country. Apparently they were stubborn, hard-to-manage creatures, and one by one they strayed off into the wilderness. You must have seen one of the survivors." Although he was only 5, Douglas knew that the war his father was referring to was the Civil War. His father had been a teenager when the war started, and Douglas was always thrilled to hear the stories his father told about meeting President Abraham Lincoln and his quick rise to the rank of regimental commander by the time he was 18.5 years old. How strange it was that now, in 1885, 20 years after the war had ended, some shaggy old camels were still wandering around Fort Selden, ghostly reminders of a bygone era. "You boys coming?" a soldier yelled in the window as he walked by Captain MacArthur's office. "Oh, yes," Douglas replied, looking at the clock on his father's wall. It was 4 o'clock. "We'll be back soon," he said, as he and Arthur dashed for the door. 2 minutes later, the 2 boys were sitting on a mule-drawn water wagon as it made its regular 1.5-mile trip from Fort Selden to the Rio Grande. At the river, the soldiers hand-pumped water into the large tank on the wagon, enough water to last those stationed at the fort for 24 hours. Hitching a ride on the water wagon was one of Douglas's favorite activities. He never knew what he would see along the way. Normally, it was not anything as startling as a camel. More often, it was coyotes and sometimes Indians off in the distance. In the evening, Douglas always told his parents what he had seen during the day, and often